The broadcast reached every inhabited world in the galaxy simultaneously. 12-year-old Marcus Chen stood on the execution platform, his small hands bound behind his back with energy restraints that glowed blue against his pale skin. The Zephyrian execution chamber was a massive amphitheater carved from black stone, filled with thousands of alien spectators whose chittering and clicking sounds echoed off the walls. Commander Vextal, the towering insectoid leader of the Galactic Enforcement Division, stepped forward. His forearms gestured dramatically as his translator broadcasted his words across the known universe. Citizens of the Galactic Federation, today we demonstrate what happens to those who defy our authority. This human child represents the stubborn defiance of his entire species. Marcus had been captured 3 weeks ago when human colonists on Kepler 442b refused to surrender their mining rights to the Zephyrian Empire. The boy's parents were among the first to die when orbital bombardment began. He survived in the underground shelters until Zephyrian ground forces dragged him out. The execution was meant to send a message. Humans had been expanding too quickly, claiming too many worlds, ignoring Zephyrian territorial demands. The Federation Council decided that a public execution would break human morale and force their governments to negotiate. Marcus looked directly into the broadcast cameras. His brown eyes showed no fear, only a quiet determination that made even some Zephyrian observers shift uncomfortably. He spoke clearly, his young voice carrying across the amphitheater. "My name is Marcus Chen. I'm from Earth. Tell my people what you did here today." Commander Vextal raised his plasma weapon. "Any last words, human spawn?" Marcus straightened his shoulders. "Humanity remembers everything. We forgive nothing. You just made the biggest mistake in galactic history." The plasma bolt struck Marcus in the chest. His small body crumpled to the stone floor as billions of beings across the galaxy watched. The broadcast continued for several more minutes, showing the Zephyrian crowd cheering while alien dignitaries nodded their approval. On Earth, President Sarah Martinez watched the execution from the Situation Room deep beneath the White House. Around her, military leaders sat in stunned silence. Admiral James Rodriguez, head of the Earth Defense Force, slowly removed his cap and placed it on the table. "How long until our deep space fleets can reach Zephyrian space?" President Martinez asked, her voice deadly calm. "Our fastest ships could reach their outer colonies in 6 hours, Admiral Rodriguez replied. "But, Madam President, they have superior numbers. Their fleet outnumbers ours 5-1. President Martinez stood up, her hands flat on the table. "Admiral, activate Protocol 7. Send the message to all human colonies, all human ships, all human stations. Tell them what the Zephyrians just did. Tell them about Marcus Chen." Across human space, the emergency broadcasts began. On Mars, workers in the terraforming station stopped their machines and gathered around communication screens. On the asteroid mining platforms of the belt, rough miners with fusion torches in their hands watched the footage with growing rage. On the frontier worlds beyond Centauri, colonists who had carved farms from alien soil with their bare hands saw a child of their species murdered for the galaxy's entertainment. The response was immediate and unanimous. Every human military unit, from the massive battle cruisers of the home fleet to the single-pilot fighters defending remote outposts, began moving towards Zephyrian territory. Civilian ships converted themselves into armed vessels. Mining ships loaded with explosive charges became improvised warships. Even the massive terraforming barges began changing course, their fusion engines glowing brighter as they accelerated toward war. Captain Elena Vasquez commanded the stealth frigate Shadow Strike, currently positioned just outside the Proxima Centauri system. She had been monitoring Zephyrian communications when the execution broadcast began. Now she watched her crew's faces as they absorbed what they had just witnessed. "Captain," her communications officer, Lieutenant Kim, spoke quietly. "We're receiving orders from Earth Command. Operation Righteous Fury is now active. All human vessels are ordered to engage Zephyrian targets immediately." Elena looked at her tactical display. The nearest Zephyrian outpost was only 3 light hours away. "Set course for Zephyrian Station Alpha 7. Maximum stealth approach. Charge all weapon systems." Her crew moved with deadly efficiency. These weren't professional soldiers. They were explorers, scientists, engineers who had volunteered for deep space missions. But they had just watched aliens murder a human child for sport, and something primal had awakened in them. Similar scenes played out across human space. Dr. Michael Santos, a xenobiologist aboard the research vessel Darwin's Dream, authorized the conversion of his ship's scientific equipment into weapons. The particle accelerators designed to study cosmic phenomena could easily punch through Zephyrian armor. The quantum transmitters meant for communication with Earth could jam enemy sensors. In the belt, Captain Zhang Wei commanded a convoy of mining ships hauling ice to Mars. Within minutes of receiving the broadcast, his ships were heading toward the Zephyrian trade route near Jupiter. Their cargo holds filled with volatile mining explosives had become massive bombs. The Zephyrian Empire had made their calculations based on military strength alone. They counted ships, weapons, soldiers. They had observed human expansion and concluded that humans were typical expansionist species, aggressive but ultimately predictable. They had not accounted for human psychology. They did not understand that humans were the only species in the galaxy that had evolved as persistence hunters, creatures that would chase their prey across continents until it collapsed from exhaustion. They did not realize that humans were the only species that regularly risked their lives for strangers, that would die for abstract concepts like justice and revenge. Most critically, they had never studied human history. They did not know about Sherman's March, about Stalingrad, about the firebombing of Dresden. They had never heard the phrase total war. As the first human ships began entering Zephyrian space, Admiral Vextal was celebrating his successful execution with his staff officers. The broadcast had been viewed by over 1 trillion beings. The message was clear: defy the Galactic Federation and face extinction. He was reviewing casualty reports from the human colony bombardments when his aide burst into the command center. Admiral, long-range sensors are detecting human vessels approaching our territory. Multiple contacts moving at high speed. Vextal's mandibles clicked in annoyance. How many ships? 12? They seek revenge for their dead child. Sir, the aide's voice trembled. We count over 3,000 ships, and more are arriving every minute. 8 minutes after Marcus Chen died, the first human ship reached Zephyrian space. Captain Elena Vasquez's stealth frigate Shadow Strike dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler 438 system. Her sensors immediately detected Zephyrian Station Alpha 7, a massive trading hub that serviced over 200 merchant vessels daily. The station's shields were down, its weapons powered to standby mode. They weren't expecting trouble. All stop, Elena ordered. Passive sensors only. I want to know everything about that station. Lieutenant Kim worked his console rapidly. Captain, I'm reading approximately 15,000 Zephyrians aboard the station. Minimal military presence, looks like mostly civilian traders and their families. Elena stared at the tactical display. 15,000 aliens. 8 minutes ago they had cheered as a human child was murdered for their entertainment. Her finger hovered over the weapons activation switch. Captain, her chief engineer, Warrant Officer Torres, spoke from behind her. We could disable their life support instead of using weapons. Give them a chance to evacuate. Elena turned to face her crew. These people had followed her across the galaxy, trusted her decisions through dangerous missions in unexplored space. They deserved to know her thinking. They broadcast that execution to every world in the galaxy, she said quietly. They wanted us to see our children die. They wanted us to be afraid. She paused, looking at each crew member. I want to show them what human fear looks like. She activated the weapons system. Target their fusion reactors. Full spread of torpedoes. No warnings. The Shadow Strike launched 12 quantum torpedoes simultaneously. The weapons crossed the distance to the station in 18 seconds. The Zephyrians had just enough time to detect the incoming missiles before their world ended in nuclear fire. Station Alpha 7 vanished in an expanding ball of plasma. 15,000 aliens died instantly. The explosion was visible from 3 different star systems. Elena activated the ship's emergency broadcaster, sending a message on all Zephyrian frequencies. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Earth Defense Force. We saw what you did to Marcus Chen. This is just the beginning. Humanity is coming. Across Zephyrian territory, similar attacks were already underway. The human fleet hadn't coordinated their assault. There had been no time for complex planning. Instead, every human ship had simply headed for the nearest Zephyrian target and attacked without mercy. Captain Zhang, Wei's mining convoy reached the Jupiter trade route just as a Zephyrian merchant fleet was passing through. 12 massive cargo ships protected by 2 military escorts, carrying food and manufactured goods to Zephyrian colonies. Zhang's ships were built for hauling ice and asteroids, not warfare, but their cargo holds were filled with industrial explosives, and their mining equipment could cut through solid rock. Zephyrian ship armor was much softer than asteroid mineral deposits. "All ships, this is Zhang," he broadcast to his convoy. "Remember Marcus Chen. Remember why we're here." The mining ships accelerated toward the Zephyrian convoy. The alien escort vessels opened fire, their plasma weapons scoring hits on the human ships. 2 mining vessels exploded, their crews of 20 men and women dying in the cold vacuum of space. But the remaining ships pressed forward. Zhang's flagship, the Prosperity, rammed directly into the largest Zephyrian cargo vessel. The mining explosives in his hold detonated on impact, creating a chain reaction that destroyed both ships and damaged 3 others. Within minutes, the entire Zephyrian convoy was debris. Zhang and his people were dead, but they had eliminated a major supply line feeding Zephyrian forces. Similar scenes played out throughout the galaxy. Dr. Michael Santos converted his research vessel's particle accelerators into weapons and attacked a Zephyrian science station. The aliens had been studying human biology, trying to develop more effective ways to kill human colonists. Santos made sure their research died with them. On the frontier world of New Geneva, colonists received word of Marcus Chen's execution just as Zephyrian ground forces were preparing to attack their settlement. The humans had been negotiating surrender terms, hoping to save their children from orbital bombardment. Instead, they armed every person over the age of 12. Farm equipment became weapons, fertilizer became explosives, the greenhouse domes became bunkers. When the Zephyrian soldiers landed, they expected to face a defeated enemy begging for mercy. Instead, they walked into the most vicious ground combat any of them had ever experienced. Farmer John Harrison, who had spent 15 years growing crops in New Geneva's alien soil, used his knowledge of local terrain to lead Zephyrian patrols into carefully prepared ambushes. Teacher Lisa Brennan, who had educated 3 generations of human children, now taught survival tactics to teenagers barely old enough to hold rifles. The Zephyrians had superior weapons and armor, but they had never faced an enemy that refused to surrender. Humans who had lost family members in the orbital bombardment fought with desperate fury, using tactics the aliens had never encountered. 8-year-old Amy Collins hid in a ventilation shaft for 6 hours, then emerged to plant explosives under a Zephyrian command post. Retired engineer Bob Martinez, 73 years old and suffering from arthritis, crawled through sewage tunnels to disable alien communications equipment. The battle for New Geneva lasted 18 hours. When it ended, every Zephyrian soldier was dead. The human colonists had lost 60% of their population, but they had proven something important. Humans would not go quietly into extinction. News of these attacks reached Zephyrian High Command within hours. Admiral Vextal reviewed the reports with growing disbelief. Dozens of Zephyrian facilities had been destroyed. Hundreds of thousands of Zephyrian civilians were dead. Human ships were appearing throughout Zephyrian space faster than his forces could respond. "This makes no sense," Vextal told his intelligence chief, Colonel Mordex. "Our projections showed that humans would negotiate after the execution. Their governments should be contacting us to discuss surrender terms." Colonel Mordex, a veteran of 17 different conquest campaigns, studied the tactical displays with professional interest. "Admiral, I think we misunderstood human psychology. Look at these attack patterns. No coordination, no overall strategy. Every human unit is acting independently." "That's exactly my point," Vextal replied. "Uncoordinated attacks should be easy to defeat. We can concentrate our forces against isolated human ships." "But Admiral," Mordex continued, "they're not trying to win a conventional military victory. Look at their targets: civilian stations, supply convoys, research facilities. They're not attacking our military bases. They're attacking our infrastructure, our economy, our population centers." Vextal's mandibles clicked nervously. "You think they're trying to cause economic damage? Force us to negotiate through commercial pressure?" Mordex was quiet for a long moment, studying the reports from New Geneva. "No, Admiral. I think they're trying to kill every Zephyrian in the galaxy, and I think they might succeed." As if to emphasize his point, another alarm sounded. Long-range sensors had detected a new wave of human ships entering Zephyrian space. This time there were thousands of them. The second wave of human ships arrived 6 hours after Marcus Chen's execution. Unlike the scattered independent attacks of the first wave, these vessels moved with coordinated precision that made Admiral Fextal's blood run cold. Admiral James Rodriguez commanded the Earth Defense Force's Third Fleet from the bridge of the battlecruiser Retribution. 57 ships under his direct command, with more human vessels joining his formation every hour. They dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Zeta Reticuli system, home to over 12 billion Zephyrians. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, long-range sensors confirm intelligence reports. Zephyrian Home Defense Fleet is stationed here, 43 capital ships, approximately 200 escort vessels. Rodriguez studied the tactical display. The Zephyrian fleet was positioned in a defensive formation around their major colonies. Standard military doctrine. Protect the population centers, force the enemy to come to you. It might have worked against any other species. Signal the fleet, Rodriguez ordered. Implement Morrison Protocol. Target designation. All Zephyrian infrastructure. Military targets are secondary priority. The Morrison Protocol had been developed after the colony wars 30 years ago, when human settlements faced extinction from alien raiders. It was named after Colonel Sarah Morrison, who had pioneered the tactics during the Siege of New Normandy. The basic principle was simple. Destroy the enemy's ability to sustain their civilization and their military becomes irrelevant. Rodriguez opened a channel to the Zephyrian fleet. This is Admiral Rodriguez of the Earth Defense Force. You executed a human child for entertainment. We're here to show you what that cost you. The response came from Admiral Kexavon, commander of the Zephyrian Home Defense Fleet. Human fleet, you are vastly outnumbered. Surrender now and we will consider allowing your people to negotiate terms. Rodriguez cut the transmission without responding. Instead, he gave the order that would change galactic history. All ships begin Morrison Protocol. Fire at will. The human fleet split into multiple attack groups, each targeting different parts of the Zeta Reticuli system. Instead of engaging the Zephyrian warships directly, they headed for the orbital manufacturing platforms, the asteroid mining stations, the freight terminals that kept Zephyrian civilization running. Captain Rebecca Park commanded the destroyer squadron assigned to the industrial sector. Her target was manufacturing platform Gamma 7, which produced military equipment for the entire sector. As her ships approached, Zephyrian fighters scrambled to intercept them. All fighters engaging, her tactical officer reported. Enemy vessels are trying to draw us into direct combat. Ignore them, Park ordered. Stay focused on the platform. Let the fighters come to us. The Zephyrian pilots flew with the precision of well-trained professionals, but they had never faced human desperation. Park's gunners, many of whom had family members on frontier colonies now under Zephyrian bombardment, fired with accuracy born of pure rage. When the first wave of Zephyrian fighters was destroyed, Park's ships continued toward the manufacturing platform. The facility's defensive guns opened fire, scoring hits on 2 human destroyers. The ships absorbed the damage and kept coming. Range to target 8,000 kilometers, the navigation officer announced. Platform is requesting permission to surrender. Park thought about Marcus Chen, standing on that execution platform with his hands bound. Denied. Continue attack approach. Manufacturing platform Gamma 7 exploded in a series of secondary explosions as stored military equipment detonated. The facility had employed over 30,000 Zephyrians. None of them survived. Across the system, similar attacks were destroying the infrastructure that supported Zephyrian civilization. The massive freight terminal at Zeta Reticuli C was obliterated by the cruiser Memphis, along with 6 months of food supplies destined for military units. The research station developing new weapons was destroyed by the science vessel Discovery, crewed by researchers who had converted their exploration ship into a weapon of war. Admiral Kexavon found himself in an impossible position. His fleet was designed to fight other military forces in traditional ship-to-ship combat. But the humans weren't interested in traditional warfare. They were systematically destroying everything that made Zephyrian civilization possible, and they were willing to absorb massive casualties to do it. Sir, his aide reported, the humans have destroyed 17 major industrial facilities in the past 4 hours. Our economic projections show that continued losses at this rate will cause total system collapse within 2 weeks. Kexavon studied the tactical displays. Human ships were swarming throughout his system like some kind of plague. Every time his forces moved to engage them, the humans would withdraw toward another target, forcing him to choose between protecting his infrastructure and engaging the enemy fleet. "Signal Admiral Vextal," he ordered. "Tell him we need immediate reinforcements. The humans aren't trying to conquer our territory. They're trying to destroy it." But Vextal was dealing with his own crisis. Human attacks were occurring simultaneously across dozens of Zephyrian systems. Every military commander was requesting reinforcements. Every colonial governor was reporting massive infrastructure damage. The worst report came from the border colony of Kepler 450UC, the human task force that attacked. That system had employed a tactic no one had expected. They had captured a Zephyrian news broadcast facility and were transmitting footage of the attack across the galaxy. The images were horrifying. Zephyrian civilians fleeing burning cities while human soldiers advanced through the ruins. The commentary was provided by Captain Maria Santos, a combat veteran whose own daughter had been killed in the initial Zephyrian bombardments. "My name is Captain Maria Santos," she announced to the galaxy. 3 weeks ago, Zephyrian forces murdered my 8-year-old daughter Elena during their attack on New Terra. Today, Zephyrian forces executed 12-year-old Marcus Chen for your entertainment. The camera panned across burning Zephyrian buildings. This is what happens when you make war on human children. The broadcast was being transmitted to every inhabited world in the galaxy. Billions of aliens were watching Zephyrian civilization burn, while humans systematically destroyed everything the Zephyrians had built. Other alien species began to take notice. The Altarian Council, longtime rivals of the Zephyrian Empire, observed the human attacks with professional interest. The Procyon Trade Federation quietly began canceling contracts with Zephyrian companies, not wanting to be associated with a species that was being so thoroughly humiliated. Most disturbing for Zephyrian leadership, some of their own subject species began expressing support for the human campaign. The Vegan mining colonies conquered by the Zephyrians 50 years ago reported increased resistance activity. The dolphin-like cetaceans of the Epsilon Eridani system, whose homeworld had been occupied for decades, began conducting sabotage operations against Zephyrian facilities. "This is becoming a general revolt," Colonel Mordex warned Admiral Vextal. "The humans aren't just attacking us militarily. They're inspiring our enemies and destabilizing our entire empire." Vextal reviewed the casualty reports with growing horror. In 18 hours, human forces had killed over 2 million Zephyrians and destroyed infrastructure worth trillions of credits. The economic damage was already forcing him to withdraw military units from frontier positions to protect core worlds. "How many human ships are we facing?" he asked. "Current estimates suggest over 10,000 vessels," Mordex replied. "But Admiral, that's not our main problem. Our main problem is that they're not fighting like any military force we've ever encountered. They're fighting like—" He paused, searching for the right word. "Like what, Colonel?" "Like a species that believes extinction is preferable to surrender." As if to emphasize the point, another alert sounded. Human forces had just destroyed the Zephyrian Military Academy on Proxima Centauri b. 3,000 young Zephyrian officers, the future leadership of their military, had died in the attack. The humans were not just winning battles. They were systematically eliminating the Zephyrian Empire's ability to continue existing as a civilization, and they showed no signs of stopping. On the 3rd day of the war, the Zephyrian High Command made a decision that would define the final phase of the conflict. Admiral Vextal, facing the complete collapse of his empire, authorized the use of their most devastating weapon, planetary bombardment ships capable of destroying entire worlds. "If we cannot defeat the humans militarily," Vextal announced to his senior staff, "we will hold their colonies hostage. Surely even these savage creatures will negotiate when faced with the extinction of their own people." The massive Zephyrian dreadnought Extinction's Edge was the largest ship in their fleet, a 7-kilometer-long vessel equipped with planet-killing weapons. Admiral Torvex commanded the ship as it entered the Sol system, heading directly for Earth. Torvex opened a transmission to Earth's defense forces. "Humans of Earth, this is Admiral Torvex of the Zephyrian Empire. You have 72 hours to withdraw all human forces from Zephyrian territory. If you refuse, we will demonstrate the same mercy you showed to our people." The response came from Earth Defense Command within minutes. Fleet Admiral Sarah Chen, Marcus Chen's older sister, appeared on the communication screen. Her resemblance to the executed boy was unmistakable. "Admiral Torvex," she said calmly, "you just made your second mistake. Your first was killing my brother. Your second was coming to our home." Sarah cut the transmission and activated humanity's most closely guarded secret, the Sol defense grid. Hidden. Weapons platforms throughout the solar system suddenly came online, revealing themselves for the first time since their construction decades ago. The extinction's edge found itself surrounded by over 300 automated defense platforms, each one equipped with weapons designed specifically to kill capital ships. Torvex had brought one dreadnought to fight the defenses of humanity's homeworld. "Target the planet," Torvex ordered desperately. "If we're going to die, we take their homeworld with us." The extinction's edge began charging its planet-killer weapon, a process that would take 12 minutes. The automated defense platforms opened fire simultaneously, their combined firepower designed to stop exactly this type of threat. But Admiral Chen had other plans. The experimental cruiser Retribution, equipped with humanity's first successful faster-than-light ramming system, materialized directly in front of the extinction's edge. Captain David Park, commanding the ship's volunteer crew of 150 sailors, opened a channel to Admiral Torvex. "This is Captain Park. You want to kill our world? You'll have to go through us first." He paused, then added, "Tell Marcus Chen we said hello." The Retribution activated its experimental drive system and rammed the extinction's edge at 90% of light speed. Both ships vanished in an explosion that was visible from Mars. Admiral Torvex and his crew of 12,000 Zephyrians died instantly, along with Captain Park and his volunteers, but the sacrifice had bought Earth the time it needed. The Sol defense grid completed its targeting solution and eliminated the remaining Zephyrian ships in the system. Earth was safe. The news of the attack on Earth spread throughout human space within hours. The emotional impact was immediate and devastating. Every human in the galaxy now understood that the Zephyrians were willing to destroy entire human worlds to win this war. The human response was swift and absolute. President Martinez authorized Operation Final Solution, the complete military mobilization of human civilization. Every human ship, every human weapon, every human soldier was committed to the total destruction of the Zephyrian Empire. Admiral Rodriguez, commanding the largest human fleet ever assembled, received his orders directly from Earth Command. No Zephyrian military installation is to remain functional. No Zephyrian government facility is to remain intact. No Zephyrian industrial capacity is to survive. The human war machine, which had been operating at perhaps 30% capacity during the first 3 days of fighting, now engaged at full power. Manufacturing facilities throughout human space began producing weapons, ships, and ammunition at unprecedented rates. Civilian industries converted to military production. Even the massive terraforming ships were equipped with weapons and sent to war. Dr. Rebecca Martinez, the lead xenobiologist studying Zephyrian psychology, made a discovery that changed the entire strategic approach. Her analysis of captured Zephyrian communications revealed something crucial about their species. They were hive-minded, creatures who couldn't function without centralized leadership. "The Zephyrian Empire isn't like human civilization," she explained to the military. "Leadership via holographic conference. Humans can operate independently, make decisions at the local level, adapt to changing circumstances. Zephyrians require constant direction from their hierarchical leadership structure." Admiral Rodriguez immediately understood the implications. "You're saying if we eliminate their command structure, their entire civilization will collapse?" "Exactly. Cut off the head and the body dies. They literally cannot function as a society without their leaders telling them what to do." This intelligence led to Operation Decapitation, a coordinated assault on every major Zephyrian command center simultaneously. Human special forces, supported by the full might of the human fleet, targeted Zephyrian leadership with surgical precision. Captain Maria Santos, the same officer who had provided commentary during the broadcast of Kepler 452c's destruction, led a strike team against the Zephyrian Military Academy on Alpha Centauri. Her target wasn't the buildings or the equipment, it was the future leadership of the Zephyrian military. "Remember, people," she told her strike team as they prepared for insertion, "these aren't just enemy soldiers. These are the creatures who cheered when they murdered our children. Show them the same mercy they showed Marcus Chen. The Academy raid lasted 6 hours. When it ended, 3,000 young Zephyrian officers were dead, along with their instructors and administrators. The next generation of Zephyrian military leadership had been eliminated. Similar raids across Zephyrian space targeted government officials, military commanders, industrial leaders, and anyone else in a position of authority. Human intelligence had identified every major figure in Zephyrian society, and human special forces hunted them down with methodical precision. Admiral Vextel himself was cornered on the fortress world of Kepler 442b, the same planet where Marcus Chen had been captured. Captain Elena Vasquez personally led the assault on his command bunker, fighting through layers of defenses to reach the Zephyrian admiral. When Elena finally confronted Vextel in his command center, the alien leader attempted to negotiate. "Captain, surely we can reach some accommodation. The war has caused enough death on both sides." Elena looked at the creature who had ordered Marcus Chen's execution. "You're right, Admiral. The war has caused enough death. That's why we're ending it." She raised her plasma rifle and executed Vextal with a single shot to the head, the same way he had ordered Marcus Chen's death. Within hours of Vextal's death, Zephyrian resistance began to collapse. Deprived of centralized leadership, individual Zephyrian units began surrendering or abandoning their positions. The hive-minded species literally could not function without their leaders telling them what to do. On Zeta Reticuli Prime, the Zephyrian homeworld, billions of aliens found themselves unable to make basic decisions about how to organize their society. Food distribution systems broke down, power grids failed, transportation networks collapsed. The most advanced civilization in the galaxy was reverting to primitive chaos because their leaders were dead. Human occupation forces found themselves governing a species that couldn't govern itself. Zephyrian civilians would approach human soldiers asking for permission to perform basic tasks like repairing infrastructure or distributing food. Colonel Jennifer Walsh, now serving as military governor of the conquered Zeta Reticuli system, filed a report that summarized the situation. The Zephyrian species appears to be biologically incapable of independent thought. Without their hierarchical command structure, they revert to a state similar to human children. They require constant supervision and direction. President Martinez reviewed the reports from across former Zephyrian space and made a decision that would reshape the galaxy. The Zephyrian Empire is officially dissolved. All former Zephyrian territory is now under human administration. All Zephyrian populations are considered wards of the human state. It was the most complete military victory in galactic history. In just 4 days, humanity had not only defeated the largest empire in the galaxy, but had effectively adopted its entire population as dependents. The war that began with the execution of one human child had ended with humanity becoming the dominant species in the galaxy. 6 months after the war ended, Governor Jennifer Walsh stood on the observation deck of the former Zephyrian Capitol building on Zeta Reticuli Prime, watching human engineers repair the damage from the final battle. The irony wasn't lost on her. Humans were now rebuilding the same infrastructure they had systematically destroyed during the war. Governor, her aide, Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim approached with the daily reports. "We have the population assessment from Sector 7. Approximately 2 million Zephyrians in that region alone are requesting assignment to work details." Jennifer reviewed the data tablet with growing concern. The Zephyrian population had adapted to human rule with disturbing ease. Without their natural leaders, they had simply transferred their need for direction to their human conquerors. They waited for human administrators to tell them when to work, when to eat, even when to reproduce. "Any signs of organized resistance?" Jennifer asked. "None, ma'am. If anything, they seem relieved that someone is making decisions for them again." The psychiatric evaluation teams report that Zephyrians experience severe anxiety when forced to make independent choices. Dr. Michael Santos, the xenobiologist who had been studying Zephyrian psychology since the war ended, entered the observation deck carrying his latest research findings. "Governor, I've completed the analysis you requested. The results are troubling." Jennifer gestured for him to continue. "The Zephyrian species has been selectively bred for obedience over thousands of years. Their natural leadership caste was genetically modified to produce pheromones that suppress independent thought in the general population. When we eliminated their leaders, we didn't just remove their government, we removed their biological ability to function as individuals. The implications hit Jennifer immediately. Are you saying they're permanently dependent on external direction? Without significant genetic therapy, yes. The average Zephyrian civilian literally cannot make complex decisions without chemical signals from a leadership caste. They've been bred to be perfect subjects, not independent beings. This discovery had profound implications for human administration of former Zephyrian territory. Across dozens of worlds, human governors were dealing with populations that required constant supervision. Zephyrian children couldn't learn without being told exactly what to study. Zephyrian workers couldn't perform tasks without detailed instructions. Zephyrian communities couldn't organize themselves without external management. Captain Elena Vasquez, now serving as military commander of the Kepler sector, faced a different problem. Her intelligence teams had discovered evidence of what the Zephyrians had been planning before the war ended. Governor Walsh, Elena reported during their weekly conference call, "We found documentation of something called the Final Protocol. It appears the Zephyrian leadership was preparing to unleash biological weapons against human colonies if they lost the war." Jennifer felt her blood chill. What kind of biological weapons? Engineered viruses designed specifically to target human DNA. The research was being conducted on 17 different worlds. They were planning to poison entire human systems and make them uninhabitable for centuries. This revelation sparked intense debate among human leadership. President Martinez convened an emergency cabinet meeting to discuss the implications. "Ladies and gentlemen," President Martinez addressed her advisors, "we're facing a species that was planning genocide against humanity on a scale we never imagined. The question is, what do we do about it?" Admiral Rodriguez, now serving as military advisor to the civilian government, presented the military perspective. "Madam President, the Zephyrian species represents a permanent threat to human existence. Even under our control, they retain the knowledge and genetic material to recreate their biological weapons." Dr. Rebecca Martinez, the president's sister and head of the Xenological Research Department, offered a different view. "The current Zephyrian population consists mostly of civilians who had no knowledge of these weapons programs. Punishing them for their leaders' crimes would make us no better than the empire we destroyed." The debate continued for hours, but President Martinez ultimately made a decision that would define humanity's relationship with its former enemies. "We will not commit genocide against the Zephyrian people. However, we will implement permanent safeguards to ensure they can never again threaten human civilization." The safeguards were comprehensive and irreversible. All Zephyrian research facilities were dismantled and their contents destroyed. Zephyrian populations were relocated away from strategic resources. Most significantly, human genetic engineers began working to modify Zephyrian DNA to remove their capacity for creating biological weapons. The process was voluntary in name but mandatory in practice. Zephyrians who refused genetic modification were relocated to isolated worlds under permanent quarantine. Those who accepted the modifications received full integration into human society, including education, employment, and even limited self-governance under human supervision. Captain Rebecca Park, now serving as administrator of the Genetic Modification Program, oversaw the largest bioengineering project in galactic history. "We're not just changing their DNA," she explained to visiting Federation observers. "We're fundamentally altering what it means to be Zephyrian." The Federation Council, still meeting on Kepler 186F, watched these developments with growing unease. Ambassador Thelnox convened a special session to address what many species viewed as humanity's increasingly authoritarian approach to galactic governance. "Fellow ambassadors," Thelnox announced, "the human species has demonstrated capabilities that threaten the balance of galactic civilization. In 4 days, they destroyed the largest empire in our history. In 6 months, they have fundamentally altered an entire species. We must consider what this means for the rest of us." The debate that followed revealed deep divisions within the Federation. Some species, like the vegans and cetaceans who had suffered under Zephyrian rule, supported human actions as justified response to genocide. Others, particularly species with their own expansionist ambitions, viewed humanity as a growing threat. Ambassador Veltar of the Vegan Confederation stood to address the assembly. The humans have shown us what happens when a species commits genocide against their children. Perhaps other species should consider this lesson before making similar mistakes. But Ambassador Rexdahl of the Cannabis Trade Federation expressed a different concern. The humans have demonstrated that they consider any threat to their offspring to justify the complete destruction of the threatening civilization. They have shown they are willing and able to commit species-level modifications against their enemies. How long before they decide another species represents a threat? The question hung in the chamber like a sword over the heads of every representative. Humanity had emerged from the war as the dominant military and technological power in the galaxy. They controlled former Zephyrian territory, which included some of the richest systems known to galactic civilization. They had proven they could defeat any existing military force. Most disturbing to many species, humans had shown they were willing to take responsibility for governing other species when those species proved unable to govern themselves. The Zephyrian population was being treated well under human administration, but they were no longer truly independent. Dr. Sarah Kim, attending the Federation session as a human observer, addressed the Assembly's concerns directly. Honorable ambassadors, humanity seeks no conflict with other species. We ask only that you remember what happens when someone threatens our children. The Zephyrian Empire learned this lesson. We hope others will not require the same education. Her words were diplomatic, but the underlying message was clear. Humanity would respond to any threat against human children with the same devastating force they had used against the Zephyrians. As the session ended, representatives from 47 different species left the assembly hall with a new understanding of galactic reality. The age of Zephyrian dominance was over. The age of human dominance had begun, and at the center of it all was the memory of a 12-year-old boy named Marcus Chen, whose execution had triggered the most complete military victory in galactic history. His name was now taught in schools across human space, remembered as the child whose death had made humanity the protector of all children in the galaxy. The boy who died to send a message had indeed sent one, just not the message his executioners had intended. 1 year after Marcus Chen's execution, President Sarah Martinez stood before the newly constructed Memorial of Remembrance on Earth. The monument was built from materials taken from the ruins of Zephyrian Station Alpha 7, the first target destroyed in humanity's war of vengeance. At its center was a simple statue, a 12-year-old boy with his hands bound, looking directly forward with quiet determination. The inscription beneath read, Marcus Chen, the boy whose death taught the galaxy to protect its children. Thousands of people had gathered for the memorial service, including representatives from dozens of species who had traveled across the galaxy to pay their respects. Among them were former Zephyrian civilians, now living under human administration, who had requested permission to attend, Dr. Elena Santos, one of the modified Zephyrians who now served as liaison between human and Zephyrian communities, approached the memorial with flowers from her homeworld. The genetic modifications had not only removed her species' capacity for biological warfare, but had also enhanced their ability to think independently. She was among the first generation of truly free Zephyrians. President Martinez, Elena said quietly, my people asked me to deliver a message. We know that our former leaders' actions cannot be forgiven, but we hope that our children might earn the right to be considered friends of humanity. President Martinez looked at the former enemy, who had become something unprecedented in galactic history. Willing subject who had chosen to join human civilization rather than resist it. Dr. Santos, your people are already part of humanity's future. The question is what kind of future we build together. The ceremony was broadcast across the galaxy, watched by trillions of beings who had witnessed the most dramatic shift in galactic power in recorded history. The human empire now controlled over 200 systems, including all former Zephyrian territory. But unlike previous galactic empires, humanity's expansion wasn't driven by conquest. It was driven by an almost obsessive need to protect children. Admiral Jennifer Walsh, now commanding the Galactic Protection Fleet, reported to the President about the latest expansion of human influence. Madam President, the Rigel Colonial Authority has formally requested human protection status. They're facing raids from the Deneb Pirate Confederation, and their own military is insufficient. This had become a common pattern. Species throughout the galaxy were voluntarily requesting human protection. particularly when their children were threatened. Humanity's response to the Zephyrian threat had demonstrated that humans would use overwhelming force to protect any child under their care. Regardless of species, the transformation of galactic civilization was profound. Crime rates in human-protected space had dropped to nearly zero. No pirate organization, no criminal syndicate, no terrorist group was willing to risk triggering human retaliation by harming children. The mere possibility of facing the same fate as the Zephyrian Empire was enough to deter even the most hardened criminals. Captain Elena Vasquez, now commanding the battlecruiser Marcus Chen, patrolled the frontier regions where human space bordered unaligned territory. Her ship was part of a new class of vessels designed not for conquest but for protection. Massive mobile bases that could respond to threats against human-protected populations within hours. Captain, her communications officer reported, "We're receiving a distress signal from the Tau Ceti system. Reports of Procyon raiders attacking civilian colonies." Elena's response was immediate and decisive. "Signal the fleet. All ships, maximum acceleration to Tau Ceti. Prepare for combat operations." The Procyon raiders, a species known for their aggression toward weaker civilizations, had made the mistake of attacking a colony under human protection. The battle that followed lasted less than 20 minutes. When it ended, the entire Procyon raiding fleet was debris, and their survivors were being transported to human detention facilities. But Elena's next action demonstrated how much galactic civilization had changed. Instead of simply leaving after destroying the raiders, the Marcus Chen remained in orbit while human engineers helped repair the damage to the colony. Human medical teams treated wounded civilians. Human construction crews rebuilt destroyed infrastructure. "This is what protection means," Elena explained to her crew. "We don't just eliminate threats. We take responsibility for those we protect." This philosophy had become the foundation of human galactic policy. Unlike the Zephyrian Empire, which had ruled through fear and subjugation, humanity ruled through protection and responsibility. Species under human administration enjoyed unprecedented security and prosperity, but they also accepted human authority over matters affecting children's welfare. The results were remarkable. Birth rates across human-protected space had increased dramatically as parents felt secure about their children's safety. Educational systems flourished under human oversight. Child mortality rates dropped to the lowest levels in galactic history. Even species that had initially opposed human expansion began to reconsider their positions. The Altarian Council, longtime critics of human authoritarianism, quietly approached human diplomats about protection agreements after their own children were threatened by Andromedan raiders. Ambassador David Park, son of the heroic Captain Park who had died defending Earth, negotiated the agreement that brought the Altarians under human protection. "We're not asking you to surrender your independence," he explained to the crystalline beings. "We're asking you to let us protect what matters most, your future generations." The Galactic Federation itself had been fundamentally transformed. What had once been a loose alliance of equal species had become a hierarchical system with humanity at its apex. But unlike previous galactic empires, human leadership was based on demonstrated competence rather than military conquest. Dr. Rebecca Martinez, now serving as head of the Galactic Child Welfare Organization, oversaw programs that protected young beings across dozens of species. Her teams had developed protocols for identifying and preventing threats to children before they could escalate into conflicts, requiring military intervention. "Prevention is always preferable to retaliation," she explained to her staff during their annual conference on Kepler 186f. "Our goal is to create a galaxy where no species ever feels the need to threaten another species' children." The success of these programs was evident in the statistics. Galactic conflicts involving civilian casualties had decreased by over 90% since human expansion began. Child exploitation, once common in many sectors, had been completely eliminated in human-protected space. But perhaps the most significant change was psychological. The execution of Marcus Chen had demonstrated to every species in the galaxy that humans would respond to threats against children with unlimited force. This knowledge had fundamentally altered interspecies relations. Ambassador Veltar of the Vegan Confederation, now serving as Deputy Director of the Galactic Federation, summarized the transformation during a speech commemorating the first anniversary of the war's end. Before the human intervention, we lived in a galaxy where the strong preyed upon the weak, where children were considered acceptable casualties in political conflicts. Today we live in a galaxy where harming a child is considered the most serious crime possible. This is humanity's gift to galactic civilization. The monument to Marcus Chen had become a pilgrimage site for beings across the galaxy. Parents brought their children to see the statue of the boy whose death had made the galaxy safer for all children. The memorial garden surrounding the monument contained plants from every world under human protection, a living symbol of the diversity that humanity now defended. As President Martinez concluded the memorial ceremony, she spoke words that had become humanity's unofficial motto. We are the guardians now. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. We remember those who cannot be forgotten. And we ensure that no child ever again dies for the entertainment of others. The boy who had stood on an execution platform with quiet courage, who had told his executioners they were making the biggest mistake in galactic history, had been proven right. His death had indeed been a mistake, the mistake that ended one era of galactic civilization and began another. In the end, Marcus Chen had accomplished something no military leader, no politician, no empire had ever achieved. He had made the galaxy safe for children, not through conquest or negotiation, but through the simple act of dying with dignity while the universe watched. His legacy lived on in every protected world, every safe school, every child who could sleep without fear of war. The boy had died, but his spirit had become the foundation of a new galactic order, one built not on strength or cunning, but on the fundamental principle that children must be protected at all costs. The galaxy had learned to remember everything and forgive nothing when it came to threats against the innocent. And it had learned this lesson from a 12-year-old boy who refused to surrender his dignity, even in the face of death. Marcus Chen's execution had lasted 8 minutes. His legacy would last forever.